But I think that BBC's Planet Earth has probably done more to change illustration and fantasy art than any major works in fantasy have since that DVD series came out. Pretty sexual, humans at war with these insect aliens, Zelda fucks. It all ties back to BBC. Well, it's the reason I don't support fedoras. It's all connected, man. So for me, with fantasy, I want to make something that is a little bit more modern, a little bit more metropolitan, but also, you know, with a reverence for nature and for life.
It's almost like timeless.
Timeless would be cool. Yeah. What investors of art want is a continuous and reliable brand from an artist, so that when they buy a work and it appreciates in value, there will be no question that they know it's their work. And that can, and it's to an extreme. They're like, do you want artistic freedom or brand continuity? And I said yes. Hi, my name's Casey Fulton. I'm an artist and you're watching Lowkey MTL.
You seem to be super busy nowadays. What are you up to?
Wicked busy, man. I mean, I'm just like in a period of training, I guess. You know, we're in COVID, like I was saying, like we're kind of locked up with our decisions, and I'm pretty happy with mine. It's a lot of time to reflect. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think goal setting is in a way how we keep ourselves sane. You know, I kind of lament going downtown and the bars are closed. So the best thing for me to do is to lay out exercises where I can exert as much focus as possible. So whether it's drawing like draftsmanship stuff, like learning perspective or studying human anatomy, you know, just learning how to draw a human face and spin it on a 90-degree angle and it be the same person is, there's a lot more going on you might think. Or even in piano, like just trying to get your tone to sound consistent and clean and even, you know.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that about you. So are you big on piano?
Oh yeah, big time. Studying harmony.
For how long have you been
like
pianoing?
Like 16 years. Yeah.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so I'd say that's like kind of hand in hand with visual arts, is like a love of music and the craftsmanship of playing classical and improv.
Does music relate to your art in any way?
I'm sure there's subtle back and forth between the two, but I think that there's a lot of insights from getting better at music, I think, can provide some much needed remedies for artistic practice and vice versa. So, you know, in arts, we sometimes have this fixation that one should be as original as possible, but in music, it's not only encouraged, but kind of expected that you're going to study and copy the masters and like sort of absorb it into your own language, right?
Right, yeah, I get the basics and build from there. Exactly,
and I think vice versa too, right? Because with art history and study of visual arts, we're taught to look at context and subversion in some very interesting ways that were sort of born in the 20th century. And I think to an extent those exist in music, whether it's modern production or in Western classical idioms, but it can be really nice to take things like, you know, like I say, like reframing the context of a piece the way you would in art and applying that to classical piano.
So you're saying how you're like trying to keep busy with I guess like a to-do list of things to do.
Oh yeah.
I remember the first time I met you, actually, you're telling me about Inktober.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah, that's a psycho challenge, man. That is it's psycho. Because what it is, you try to do 31 illustrations, one every day, in I guess pen, but the medium's like kind of flopped. Like it's whatever. But you're trying to do 31 illustrations in 31 days, man, and it's definitely not healthy. That's one thing. Do you eventually
get sick of illustrating by that point?
Yeah, you definitely do. I mean, like, it's kind of a fast track to burnout. Now, you know, there's a lot of industries where you're expected to draw that much, but I think the thing about it is that it's not just the challenge of producing a drawing every day, it's also the pressure to put it on Instagram and social media, where it veers from like a high cardio workout to like an abusive challenge, because having a complete image rolled out and presented and ready every day becomes kind of logistically impossible whether you're doing really well or really poorly. Because if you're doing really well, your standard will go up and up and up to a point where it's not really sustainable, especially if you have other responsibilities. And if it's going poorly, the pressure to have something as good as you can every day means that you might put 4 or 5 hours of work into a drawing by day 17, and it might be an okay piece of work by the standards any other time of the year. But if you're trying to pump out high quality image after high quality image, passable becomes unacceptable.
Right. And I find on social media as well, it's really hard to like showcase the detail in the drawing, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
Seeing it in person versus seeing it in a picture on Instagram is like a huge difference.
So true, man. It's so true. Like, I mean, not only is it pixelated, basically, you know, something very high detail where a person can bring it here or look in becomes a JPEG, but also the lens of the cameras we're used to using will crank up the contrast. You might...
Do you edit? Like, would you edit your the actual picture before you post it?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
To a limited extent. And I used to have this idea... When I first started taking pictures of my art, I love it because it's like you're looking at the drawing as if someone else made it.
Right.
And you kind of get like a little bit of distance, which is great. However, as time has gone on, I now find that I'm putting more effort into editing just to try and make the picture look like the original.
Right, yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, so you would like bring out the shadows and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Were you using Adobe for that?
To a limited extent, yeah. But I mean, I think in the best cases, I wanted to... When you're really excited, you want to get something out while it's hot, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So you want to like just use the sliders on the iPhone editor and then Instagram.
Yeah, honestly, I think you could do most of it with that. Like Lightroom is, if you want to get really crazy with the colors and like change colors up and stuff too.
Yeah.
Which I noticed, so you do painting and illustration, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like you're more on the illustration side.
Definitely
based
lately,
on what I see, yeah.
And I think it's kind of like a formalist tick, I think. I read somewhere in this book, a book called The Natural Way to Draw by a guy named Nicolaides. He was saying that you got to learn how to... This is like very stodgy, old school way of looking at art technique, but he was like, don't touch a paintbrush until you've studied drawing technique for like 5 years. And I defied that. I was like, you know, I'm young, I want to express myself, I want to use color. But as I started like, I guess like developing like a more refined palette for what I wanted to achieve in art, I was like just thinking, A, drawing and illustration is where I'm rooted in, but B, color is such a vast subject that I feel like a deeper security in drawing and illustration is needed before you like, you know, like take that leap.
Okay, I was wondering why you don't use color in illustration, but
yeah.
Is that why? It's for like the shading and...
Yeah, just trying to get as much mileage as possible out of black and white is I think a big thing. I've been doing it like slowly more and more. And if I was gonna give, I don't necessarily feel entitled to give advice yet in a lot of those processes, but I would say that for young artists who are looking to branch over, what I find has given me the most success, because it's one thing to use color, it's another thing to feel really, really engaged with a medium. And with black and white, I find that's easier. But to make the switch, what I find is easy is just add one different tone to your pieces. You know, if you use a black pen and a red pen, the amount of combinations you get with the two is so infinite that you can just branch over like organically, I think. And then inevitably you're gonna be like, well, what if I like... And you can even use very, very cheap shoddy materials and start getting results that feel good. Like you could use a yellow highlighter on top of that and feel great about what you've drawn, because it's not so much that you're using a cheap material so much as another option is available to you and it's absorbed organically into like a process, like a strong current of creative thought.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because I've seen like there's like trendy videos now coming out with people using cheap materials, like through just like a box of Crayola.
Yeah.
And they would draw like the most detailed eye.
Insane mileage out of it. Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said about that. It's very respectable, right? Because like, you know, I mean, with photography, music, very similar to art, there can be such a wicked pay gate for supplies. And I mean, it's just fun, you know? Like, what's more fun than seeing some cool new piece of equipment that's going to give you new options?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like the technology that comes with it.
Yeah,
for sure.
But I think that really goes back to the Inktober thing, man, because at the end of the day, I did like 2 or 3 days of Inktober this year, and I was like, no way. I have too much going on in life to dive into this.
So like, what exactly are you doing right now that it's COVID? And because you're keeping busy, clearly.
Yeah, big time, man.
So you're I guess piano. You're in your music side.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, as long as you're drawing or doing something every day,
right.
and thinking consciously about how, like, it ties back to like a long-term goal, then you're good. You don't have to pump out a finished thing every day. And worrying about Instagram constantly is going to get in the way of the process. But
are you exploring new ideas and new
like,
techniques and stuff?
Hell yeah, man. Big time. I mean, sometimes I feel like it's hard to be an artist and a student at the same time.
Right.
Because when you're a student, it's all about like leaving your ego at the door, listening to what another person has to offer, and really trying to absorb new stuff and shake your foundations. Whereas when you're in artist mode, there's kind of a can't tell me nothing attitude. You know what I mean? Like,
especially as an artist, I find like there's so much you have to have so much pride in your work, right?
Yeah.
So there's like a natural ego that comes with it.
Exactly. There is, you know, and that's something we all got to contend with as artists. But
it's also interesting how most artists are aware of that.
Yeah, it's good. It's good, you know, because like when that runs rampant, I mean, on a personal level, that can be really challenging with people. But I mean, just a perfect example of how hard it can be for an artist to absorb information with new ideas and new concepts you were mentioning earlier is I just realized the other day that tracing paper is extremely useful, and it's like the most obvious shit in the world. People have been like, make sure it's in a supply list of every first level course,
right? Yeah,
you know. And then finally, after years of not using it, like a fucking bull in a china shop, I was like, what if there was some way that I could have layers in real life the way you do on Photoshop? And it's like, you have a wad of tracing paper offside. So
for what, like animation?
Yeah, animation. I mean, construction. Like I was saying earlier, if you want to turn a character 90 degrees.
Oh, true.
Right. If you can boil it. This is another one that, for some reason, I just wasn't ready to absorb this fact until recently. But if you take a human face, boil it down to some basic geometric forms that you can like rebuild the face on. Anybody can turn a cube. You know, so if you find a rectangular prism in the jaw and a sphere where the head was, yeah, you boil it down to that.
Oh shit, yeah, and then you boil it down to shapes, and then you just turn the shapes and you build off of that.
Exactly,
That's
and then
cool,
you're just sitting there in amazement, and then it's funny because, like I said, you put that artist need to express and not listen aside, and you do something like that. The next time you go back, you almost don't even have to do the breakdown, because your brain kind of absorbs that process. And then,
so you're kind of doing it subconsciously as you're...
Yeah, exactly. So that's like, for me, it's just been a lot of unpacking those things and, you know, going against the impulse. Like, I'm very happy and relieved to say that I have a natural drive and a desire to create things. But the disciplined and possibly mature thing that I have to do, and that many artists are probably, you know... lacking, I'd say, is dismantling your habit, you know, and giving it like a spine, giving it a backbone with those procedures, and
I kind of giving it a structure.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of tough because, you know, I think I used the word stodgy earlier. I got a kick out of that one. It's just things that are like stuffy and old, I suppose.
Okay.
We sometimes like resist formal training because we don't want to be bogged down by prior ideas.
Yeah.
But
it just feels boring as well, right?
Oh yeah, and it is. It's just dead ass boring. Yeah. It's like the boring legwork. I mean, these are boring times, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of fitting. Sure. But
yeah, I wanted to ask you about like character development wise, because you have a specific style, right? To your characters and stuff. Well, first of all, like I wanted to ask, like, Did that just happen naturally, or were you conscious of that and you were trying to find a style in the beginning? And like, is that like when artists find their styles, are they like actively trying to find a style, or are they just kind of drawing and then eventually they're like, oh, this is kind of my style?
Yeah, it's a good question. And actually, I was just about to kind of wax on something very pertinent to that. Okay. Is that I think there's two sides to it. One is that you've got a toolkit, right? And I think the difference between somebody who has their style and somebody who's like a flat out plagiarist is that if you're going to be accused of plagiarism if you rip off one artist. If you take, let's say you look at the guy, let's see who's Hayao Miyazaki, the guy who did Studio Ghibli, like he did Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle. He's a monolith in the industry. Okay. If you only ever study his work, there's a very high chance you're going to be accused of ripping that off. Whereas if you study lots of different people in lots of different places, you're still absorbing. It's exactly like the English language or any language. You know, you just take it from many sources, and then your own individuality is like this Brita filter that's gonna sort those things out, and you're gonna pump stuff out. So at least with drawings where I feel like I was really successful, I'll show it to different people and they'll say, hey, this really reminds me of such and such, and I'll bring it to someone else and they'll have something completely different. And in most cases there's a grain of truth to both, but our brain is kind of like turning all those influences into like a chili, you know? It's like this soup of many, many ingredients. But in terms of that filter, you know, that creative spark, I think it's a two body issue. You have the language you build up from the masters, and then you have your experience that it goes through. I feel like a lot of people try to assert their individuality, and I think we're all guilty of it, you know, especially as a teenager. We do things that are like very ham-fisted, you know. We'll buy box dye and like mess up our hair, or we'll like wear a really flashy shirt and be like and to differentiate ourselves. But a really good insight that I got recently, I was refreshed on recently, is that a big part of our individuality is not things we tape to ourselves or things it's not a front we put on, you know. It's like a reduction. If you take everything else away, your individuality and what makes you, your experience of life is what cannot be stripped away, you know. So, and that ties back to so many other things we were just talking about. If you study formal technique, you know, you might fear losing what made you unique, but you're not going to lose what makes you unique until you actually die till you fucking die. Exactly. Shit.
Yeah.
So
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's rock solid. It's a foundation. It's still there. I mean, we can go through trying tasks technique wise or traumatic experiences in life, you know, and get a sense of losing yourself. But I mean, maybe it's very optimistic, but I like to think that that's something that can't be shaken, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree with that, because that's the one thing that's solid, right? Like, time's the one thing that's just going to keep moving.
Yeah.
So, like...
Yeah, it's there, right? Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the times, style are things that you don't even know are there, you know? Like, I had someone, and I was very flattered. Somebody made a comment to me. They said, I would know if it was your work anywhere.
Yeah, I was about to say that as well before, because you have this like specific. It's almost like a Zelda world. A little. It is.
Yeah, big Zelda vibes. Big Zelda vibes.
So do you think it comes from? Do you have some like? Is it actually connecting to Zelda somehow? Or?
Oh, for sure. Okay, yeah, okay. I was kind of on one about this to someone the other day. I feel like, because for me, one of the big things is that I can't really deny the things that I love when I make art, you know? And that's why I'm excited about my own work, is because I channel things that I really love into the drawings so that I can honestly be excited about them. And Zelda Zelda fucks, you know?
It's true.
It's a good game.
Yeah.
And all of them are.
And there's also most in your paintings I noticed there's a lot of animals.
Yeah,
but that you have some animals in your illustrations as well. It's very like nature and animal based as well, right?
For sure. I think
you're trying to like portray a certain message in this. Or?
Hell yeah, man. I mean, yeah, I get teased with this sometimes, but there's an inescapable Pokemon influence in my work.
Okay,
can't shake it. It's like
I
whatever.
can kind of see that,
right? And I think the big thing for me is that it seems to me like the farther we get from a human form, there are these different challenges with empathy that come up, you know? And animals, when they have big baby eyes, you know, and they have eyebrows that lift up like a dog.
So innocent looking.
Yeah, we empathize with them, right? So when I draw monsters or when I paint an animal in real life, I guess the thing that I'm interested in is how can we play with that ability to recognize a living thing on the other side?
What you're talking about right now with the empathy, like we're gonna have those same challenges with the robot world eventually, or if we're one with the robot.
Hell yeah. I mean, that's like, it's almost incomprehensible, right? I'm kind of like excited for the ways in which we can use technology to, you know, re-envision things, but obviously we're not even treating all humans equally. We're gonna like bring more conscious things onto the arena. It's like a fucking, it's just like it's a recipe for absolute disaster.
Would you consider it conscious if there's no like like where do you draw, do you know where you would draw that line of like when a machine becomes
conscious? Well,
something that you should be respectful towards, I guess, in a sense.
I've only seen season 1 of Westworld, so I don't really know where
Have you watched
goes.
Black Mirror?
Not enough.
Okay,
Not enough.
okay.
I mean, like, you're probably not shocked to hear this, but I kind of didn't watch past the episode with the guy having sex with the pig's head. I was like,
oh,
season
that was
one,
that was an artist
1.
episode too.
Yeah.
Did you watch the whole episode?
I did. Yeah, it was a piece of contemporary art. Fucking wild.
How freaky is that?
Oh, man.
But that was one of the earlier seasons, actually. Season 3 is when it gets like super good. Season 3 was amazing.
I could be on board with that. It's definitely on the watch list. I'm thinking, I've been hearing a lot about Atlanta as well. I want to check that out.
Oh, interesting.
Donald Glover is like, you know.
Oh, it's his. Okay, cool.
Yeah, he like produced it. I guess it's.
Oh, right. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Speaking of Netflix documentaries, have you watched Struggle?
No. What's that about?
Dude, you have to watch this. It's about this Polish artist named Sukalski.
Oh shit. Oh,
dude,
shit.
Yeah.
Is he like, he's like a wicked illustrator who lives
and a
in the
sculptor.
desert?
No, he's not in the desert. So he moves to, he's like in the States, and these people just like find out about him in the 80s. They start like hanging out with him.
Yeah.
And then it just turns out like they had no idea that this guy was like a
legendary
crazy legend in Poland, and like he was like making art that was like politically like adverse and shit, and like he had so much history that was just erased from him. Yeah. Which was like crazy, and then they like dig in and they find out all about his artwork and stuff.
You know what?
You gotta watch it.
I did see that actually.
Oh, you did?
I did. I'm just like, I'm realizing I had it on 2 or 3 years ago when I was at home. It's fucking wild.
Isn't that crazy?
And you know what I really loved about that? He was nuts, right? Remember, he had like a creation story,
right?
And you gotta love that. I mean, like, you know, facts, the importance of good historic, like, scientific method cannot be overstated. But a person's fantasy about how the world created is a very refreshing little story. He's like society started on fucking Easter Island. Yeah, I was like, well, that's, you know, I mean, it's a cool idea.
And he was also super like confident about his
unflinching, right? He didn't, it's like, sorry, I'm just putting on this he literally didn't have time to like doubt shit, because he was just pumping it out.
But I feel like a lot of that was to do with his upbringing, because as a kid, remember his, I think at school, the art teacher in Chicago was like, oh, like he's not drawing the proper, well, language. He was in, right, his alphabet was like a whole different alphabet, right? He created his own language. Then his father kind of backed him up, and he's like, oh, he does what he wants. And then I feel like that upbringing yielded to him having like a wild imagination and like creativity, because he had no boundaries.
Definitely. I mean, that's a super interesting topic right now, because we're kind of like contending with the questions, you know, low self-esteem is something that plagues our society, right? And these limits that people put on themselves. But at the same time, you know, when one is up in the clouds all the time and totally high on their own confidence, it's very, very hard to be considerate of the ramifications of our behavior on others around us. So it's like, I don't really, like, personally, I don't think there needs to be a dichotomy of you have healthy self-confidence and a trust in oneself, and have empathy and be able to sustain a respectful relationship with the people around you. But that's kind of the popular narrative right now, you know. I want to mince my words a little bit, I guess, because it's very in vogue. Like I was going to say, it's very in vogue to attack the confidence, but, you know, we do have extremes of egotism that are harmful to people, right? And when that goes unchecked in a personality, it is to the detriment of the people around us. So, you know, I'm a little bit optimistic about things. I like to think that there's a secure sense of self and an excitedness about one's ideas that you can foster without it being negatively impactful.
But I feel sometimes you need to be crazy enough
yeah,
to like make things actually happen.
they say that. They keep saying that shit, man. I don't
But
know.
it's true. Is it true? I don't know.
I guess so. I mean,
You
like,
just haven't seen the other version yet.
you just haven't seen the other.
version.
I mean, like, even personally, like I said, I was very flattered when somebody said that they recognized my art anywhere. I wouldn't. You know, I thought that two of my drawings were like as different as night and day. So the individuality is something that I'm not really cognizant of, and in a way, I feel better about that. But
Okay, so in your head, you don't really necessarily have a style, I guess? Is that what you're saying?
well, I guess to me, it's just a filter of how I see reality. You know,
Okay.
if you're wearing lenses that are tinted blue, everything is sort of seen through that lens. It's
Right.
literally, it's what people say. I'm gauging all the different facets of my experience, and those things don't look the same to me. But that filter of my perception, I guess, is going to be visible. And I could say that that's come through in other people's work as well for me. But the other thing is I've had, you know, I like in periods of life where I had perceived comments I had made. Sometimes I think my commentary on something is the most mundane, obvious observation, and somebody's like, "Oh, you're crazy," right? So maybe the craziness does always have to be there.
But
and
who's
it's
saying you're crazy? The artist or?
well, just like little. I mean, I've just, you know, I'm not trying to differentiate myself too much. It's just sometimes you're surprised when people find what you consider to be obvious to be weird, right? So I feel like that really ties back into this notion of individuality, right?
Yeah.
If you play a word association game with people, you know, the most obvious choice for them might say so much about their worldview.
That's it. It all comes down to perspective, right? And
Oh, yeah.
that's basically what art is. It's just
Definitely. Yeah, it's reframing. It's a contextual thing. Dude, you know what I saw that was actually kind of cool? I wanted to know what you thought of this. Is I forget the name of the buddy who directed it, but there was this like super low grade cheesy sci-fi movie that came out in the 90s called Starship Troopers. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it, but I've never watched it.
Neil Patrick Harris is in it, and it's
What?
Yeah, it's a ride, man. It's like
No way.
it is some shit.
When did this come out?
1998 is when it came out.
Okay.
But it's just fucking wild because
Is it like a comedy or?
well, yes and no. It's based on a science fiction novel, and it's hyper violent, pretty sexual, humans at war with these insect aliens. But this is where I'm going with this, is that the idea, and I heard this on actually like some other podcasters were talking about it too, was that the movie is kind of cheesy and hyper violent because the theme of the movie is that this is the type of film that would be made in a futuristic fascist society. So the director, everyone saw this movie and they're like, this guy's nuts, man. He's like, what kind of fucking movies is this guy making?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this is the type, he like assumed the persona of like a fascist director and then made a movie. And that's like where you bring acting and theater and persona to the art you create. It's like you're going into another lens. And that would be like, in my mind, very brilliant contextual reframing. So
like the characters in your illustrations, do you have in your head, or do they have like these personalities?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, you base them on people, you know, people you've met, characters you've seen that are memorable, and
so if you were to, if someone were to be like, oh, let's make a cartoon out of this. Like you would already have like storylines and stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh my God,
Right.
dude. I have like a wealth, and totally a wealth of things like that. I think I mean that's kind of the intent, actually.
Okay, dope. Yeah, that would be a pretty dope like cartoon.
Well, thank you, man.
With some like Rick and Morty vibes in there.
A little
Like,
bit, a little bit, yeah. I mean, I think I got a tendency to get high-minded with ideals about like artistic integrity and shit like that. But I mean, ultimately, it's important, I think, not to get too serious because I'm a fantasy art illustrator, and at the end of the day, I want to explore important themes, but the target audience at the end of the day is children.
Okay.
So it's got to be what is cool, what sparks amazement, and what appeals to human nature, I guess, if I could speak that generally. And Disney does a pretty good job of that. There's some shit.
Well, they work on things for like 10 years.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, also like world-class teams and stuff
Yeah,
too.
that's true. Yeah.
But I
it's
mean,
like innovative technology as well, right?
Yeah. But I mean, you got to work with what you got, right? But I would, I definitely want to do stories with the characters, and I've got that stuff envisioned quite a bit. I love fantasy world building. I don't know if have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons before?
No, but I know what that is. Yeah.
It's a hoot. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, nerd culture is mainstream now, right? So it's like it's not really socially taboo to be a nerd. But
yeah, it's quite the opposite now. Everybody's building PCs, everybody's gaming.
Yeah, it's completely standard now, right? And Dungeons and Dragons, especially with things like Stranger Things, or some other series that have come out, it's totally normalized it. But there always has been a culture of people who do these like whole worlds with their fantasy stuff. But much like other mediums, it's very subject to monolithic thinking, big time. So like, have you seen Lord of the Rings?
No, I know.
I recommend it. It's a pretty decent.
For some reason, just like fiction-wise, like I mean, things like Interstellar and like
So you're more like the sci-fi realm, like what's happening now.
Well, kind of, or like predictions of the future. That's like kind of scary, I guess.
Well, I feel like that's kind of in a lot of ways the core difference between sci-fi and fantasy, right? Is like that's speculative about the future.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But anyway, I was gonna say, man, is like with fantasy, Tolkien was a really remarkable creative person, and the works he did are such landmarks. But what happens a lot of the time is that the people who break this ground set a precedent that people have a lot of difficulty looking past. And what Tolkien did made really good sense in the 40s and 50s, and it's still a masterwork. But we have other people churning out fantasy series and content that is totally imitative of his work. And it's just like, well, it's the reason I don't support fedoras. You know what I mean? I think maybe those made sense in the 20s, but it's like, get that shit off your head today. That's not where we're at,
It might make a comeback.
Maybe it'll come back. I
haven't seen one in a while, actually.
Yeah. I will figuratively eat my shoe if fedoras make a comeback. But anyway, I was just going to say, when it comes to creativity, I'm making like a few points at once here.
Yeah.
Pardon me, man.
All good.
Like
I'm pretty ADD too, so.
Wicked. Okay, I'm all over the place. So, people always talk about how everything's been done. Hit song by the Bare Naked Ladies, it's all been done. But the context changes every minute, If somebody made great example. Future made a song called Mask Off. That's why his name is Future. He's that's fucked. So he made a song called Mask Off. The meaning of that song
shit.
We can never hear that the same way, right? So if you think about a piece that was made, like Lord of the Rings, a trilogy novel, a hexalogy, that came out 80 years ago, the landscape of our reality has changed so much that even if you were the same person as Tolkien, you would not write that work. But we're so bogged down with the precedence of a medium. So for me, with fantasy, I want to make something that is a little bit more modern, a little bit more metropolitan, but also you know, with a reverence for nature and for life.
It's almost like timeless.
Timeless would be cool. Yeah. I mean, I would be pretty fucking down to make some timeless work.
Yeah,
right?
But how do you know it's timeless? That's the problem.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's like The Simpsons predicting riots and shit. You know?
Yeah, well, the Simpsons is kind of turned out to be pretty timeless in some regards. Influences can come from really unexpected areas. This is a hunch I have. It's not founded, but I think that BBC's Planet Earth has probably done more to change illustration and fantasy art than any major works in fantasy since that DVD series came out.
The first one or each album?
I'd say the first. That's the second one too. I mean, every time you turn.
Every time, exactly.
You know, literally anything that they put David Attenborough's voice on, I'm watching that and I'm like taking notes. I'm like, yeah, bird lives in nest made of like blue items that he steals from people.
But not even that. Just the fact that Planet Earth in general just allows us to reconnect with all that shit, because there's no way of seeing that world. It's like an alien planet, right?
Yeah.
And like, I feel like every time a Planet Earth episode comes out, our consciousness as like a human race just changes.
Yeah, you know what? I would agree with you. Because
remember that fucking, the most recent one where like they see snakes hunting in packs, which was like never seen before.
They're like, we have to rewrite the whole script on this animal. Yeah, that's the type of shit I love to see, man. And also, even just on a smaller scale, kind of rewriting our norms about the natural world. I love when people leave out a wildlife camera and you see these stupid interactions between wild animals. It's just like a raccoon on a cougar's back, you know? And they're like, the people aren't looking anymore. And it's just like...
I remember you were working on a gallery.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was called Drift. With there's like horned like...
Oh, the floating cow series.
The floating cows, yeah.
Yeah, that's like the flagship. I think that's gonna... I mean, I'm really hoping that pays my bills, you know?
Are you still working on it?
Yeah, okay. I had to put a break on it I haven't painted much the last year because I've been going back to fundamentals, the plan is to like do like 30 or 40 of those.
Okay, dope.
Yeah,
well, the ones I saw were super cool.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. They're hanging up in like an apartment building / gallery downtown right now.
Okay.
So I got to touch base and get those back, but no, I definitely want to do more of those, man. I mean, it's clouds by themselves are a really fantastic study in color and form. They're different moments of the sunset, span the whole color spectrum. So you name it, you name a palette, you can do it in the sky. But also,
what are you like portraying in that though?
Well, I wanted to do something with a universality to it. There was the core concept of that Cloud Cow series is actually quite engineered, because in the art world, you have to have a recognizable thing you do over and over and over again. Well, it's like brand continuity, Artists want to explore new things, and that is in conflict with the art market, because what investors of art want is a continuous and reliable brand from an artist, so that when they buy a work and it appreciates in value, there will be no question that they know it's their work. And it's to an extreme. Right, so that's why people love artists that are dead, because you can really put a cap on what their brand is. Great artists that are alive today might turn around and do something completely unexpected, and that is bad for the appreciation of value in the art market. The same way, like, your favorite artist might turn around and do a country album after 20 years and the fans are left confused.
But I hate that, because especially now, I feel like as an artist in general, like, you should be more multifaceted, and because as a human, you're not just one thing. You're in so many things.
Oh man, what you're saying really touches on a relevant issue in the art world, right? Is that especially with people who are producing works that reflect that nature of humanity, they're going to change and they're going to grow, and they might want to branch out. You might make pottery today and turn around and make quilts tomorrow. And both are valid, but maybe you had a name in pottery and people don't want to buy your quilts. So with the Cloud Cow pieces, what I was doing, they're not connected to the fantasy universe, but stylistically there's a coherence there. What I did is I thought, I'm going to make a concept that feels hip to me, but it's malleable. So clouds change form, and the fact that I'm mixing them with cows, I very, very deliberately kept the forms moderately loose in the painting and used clouds as a medium to do that, because some of the cloud cows look more like pigs, some of them look more like dinosaurs, and in one instance I painted a goldfish and tucked it away in the corner. So the way clouds are ever shifting and changing shape, so is the subject matter of these paintings. So I have a brand that I can stick to, but I don't like when people say you either have a continuous image or many different things. I get irritated by dichotomies like that.
Yeah.
So I said, they're like, do you want artistic freedom or brand continuity? And I said, yes. Right? So that's the goal with those. And the other thing is I like the universality of it, because sunsets are beautiful, and hopefully every, culture in the world gets a nice view of the sky at some point. And the other thing I wanted to tap into with that is, like, at the end of the day, the cloud cows are just my modern take on the Lascaux cave paintings. I think those are wicked pieces of art. They're not, anatomically perfect, but
but it's interesting because one is they're doing it straight from visuals, and I think some people say that it was a form of visualization as well, where they would try to like make more animals come their way for more food and stuff.
Totally, and I believe it. I mean, all the speculation about those cave paintings is very interesting, and I think one fact it boils down to is we tend to look at those as a common heritage for humanity. The herd is something that moves us and is beautiful, and it's not a force that really exists in our lives unless we see cattle at pasture, or you have the rare opportunity to see like an elk migration, So, but we all see drifting.
Planet Earth, right?
Planet Earth. It all ties back to BBC.
Planet Earth controls us.
Yeah, it's all connected, man. But to me, it just felt like a very intuitive and very appropriate combination to take that herd cave painting style with these monsters I've been drawing and with clouds, and to do it as a series, and for that to be something that I will return to through life, and hopefully, like God willing, I can make hundreds and hundreds of those paintings, and you can explore it in different ways. Like, two cows, like the clouds clash into each other, they might mix into some sort of combination of the two, and there's a fluidity of line that's cool. So
it's just really cool how it relates to a lot of perception as well, because even if you were to like imagine the people at the Neolithic time like looking up at the sky, and it's like television for them, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like tying all those concepts together.
That's it. And I think it feels nice when you strike on an idea that feels like a meeting point of a couple different things. So it's
like you said, it's more malleable, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the malleability ultimately is why I'm most excited about showing those pieces. But I think cave art is awesome, and these are just my modern version of cave art.
Yeah, dope. I like them. Like, I'm excited to see that gallery whenever that takes place.
yeah, some point.
Do you have like an ETA or like?
Oh man, I mean, I had an ETA before the pandemic, but now I'm thinking like 2022, maybe 2023.
And how are you selling your pieces? Because you're not really on social media, man.
Oh man, I know. I've been like reclused.
Yeah.
I'm gonna redo my website and post up on some of those art sales websites.
Right.
And be more active in social media as time goes on. But at
Dude,
the
like,
end,
you could even do like a TikTok series.
Yeah, maybe.
As much as you don't want to hear the word TikTok, you can see.
You're not the first person to say that lately.
Because there's so much like art and like just the process is big on TikTok. People just want to see the process of things. So like, if you have like a time lapse of you just making something, that shit would blow up.
I think you're right. I'm gonna put some serious thought into a time lapse setup, and at the end of the day, I'm just gonna have to schlep it and get into a good gallery physically post pandemic. But online presence, I guess it's gonna come down to making time for it, like anything else.
Right. Yeah. Well, eventually you'll get a structure, and then you just follow that structure.
That's it. That's exactly it. So yeah, that's
But yeah, it all depends on your priorities, right? Like if you want to work on skill more and like still brush up on your stuff.
Yeah, like quiet period of training
Yeah.
versus publicized, right? So I think we're headed in that direction, like on a pretty fast track right now.